做架梁啊！頭方大哥裏邊瞓緊晏覺，邊個唔怕死行前一步啊？哦，咁即係冇計傾啦。好啊，江湖規矩，隻抽隻。
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening, but they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip, and a kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. Yeah, but they fought with expert timing. There was funky Billy Chin and little Sammy Chung. He said, "Here comes the big boss. Let's get it on. We took the
Hay
ground
không?
and made a stand.
Hay á.
Started swaying with the
Ủa
hand.
à.
Sudden motion made me skip.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperCaZt. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great. It's Thanksgiving. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for Hong Kong films and very thankful for this film that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, man, same here. This is a lot of fun. This is a film that you were very high on, my friend. And of course, I'm just kind of getting into this world a little bit, but you've been definitely guiding me on. And if you guys are new to the program, this man right here, my buddy SuperCaZt, loves martial arts films. If you're new to the program, my buddy SuperCaZt here loves martial arts films, and I'm just about there, man. I'm very, very close. I've said it pretty much every episode. It's like, I get it. I get the passion for it. It's insane. It's there's a little bit of a wrestling flair kind of thing, with the crazy characters and all. Definitely some anime stuff, as we'll talk about in this film. Kung Fu Hustle, of course. But you knew that. You click on the video. So, yeah, man, let's get right into it. Kung Fu Hustle. Let's talk about it, but let's start, I guess, with the man behind this film and talk a little bit about him and what makes him the man that he is.
呢度做咩啊？
我揾你咯，你好傷嘅喎，
傷咩啊？
咁你鑊手傷都硬係冇嘢嘅，
你條氣唔順咩？
你睇下邊個醫生嘅啫？
我唔係好記得咗。
嚇，都好嘅，記憶係痛苦嘅根源，你能夠唔記得係福氣嚟嘅。
聽你咁講，暗藏唏噓喎。
問君能有幾多愁？
I don't know. Stephen Chow, he's a genius. Like, I got into Hong Kong films more recently as a big time, but in the past, Stephen Chow was my guy, man. Like, yeah, I watched some Jackie Chan stuff. I watched some Bruce Lee stuff growing up, but Stephen Chow is the one that really got me into this stuff. He's the one that introduced me to these weird tones, this comedy. This guy is just amazing, and I've been a fan of his for years. I'm so glad to introduce you to him. And this is his magnum opus. This is his film that everything built up to. This is his film that made him a break star, and he was already big in Hong Kong, but this is the one that I think introduced him to the world.
Right.
And made him bigger. At least that's how I remember it. I know Shaolin Soccer came out a few years earlier, but I just remember seeing that trailer and just like, what is that? That doesn't look that great. But when Kung Fu Hustle came out, this was awesome. This was a magical experience the first time I ever watched it. I remember there's a lot of buzz around it.
Right.
I love the Roger Ebert, what he said about it. He's like, it's Jackie Chan meets Bugs Bunny meets Buster Keaton or something like that. It's just an amazing movie. It has it all. This guy, Stephen Chow, he writes it, he directs it, he stars in it. What do you think about just what he did with this movie?
Everything you said, I have to echo. I mean, and I don't mean that to sound stupid or anything like that, but there's so many influences, and I think if you just come into this film, if this is your intro into this guy, which I think this is probably the best intro film to his work, and that's somebody that's still pretty much a novice in this work. But would you agree with that? Like, if you were gonna say, like, who is Stephen Chow? I'll show you who Stephen Chow is. Bam, Kung Fu Hustle. Would you agree with this is probably the best intro to this guy's kind of style?
Totally agree. This guy, I mean, this is his style at its best.
Yeah.
But also it's its most approachable for Western audiences because it really makes a lot of references to like The Matrix and Kill Bill. Gangs of New York was a big film at the time, and it has all those elements in there. And not to say his older films didn't reference Western stuff. It's just, if you go back to the 90s, this guy was, it's very silly humor, and I know some people get into that, but this one, I don't know. I think it finds the fine balance for Westerners to approach it because it doesn't go too crazy. It doesn't get totally ridiculous. At the same time, I think it does have enough of his style and enough of his stuff in there to kind of, like you're saying, be an introduction.
Oh.
唔好意思，你覺得點啊？
我覺得你可以行前啲同埋瞄準啲咯，好唔好啊？
又多咗把個病咧？
我點知你病咗去邊啫？
都係同一把，冇理由。
唔好啊！
啊，對唔住，你係咪有嘢想講啫？
係，我醒起我有啲緊要事，再聯絡啦。
死啦！知道咗添，冇埋你啊！
We've kind of talked about Stephen Chow and what his style is and everything, but the visuals in this film in particular, we've talked about a little bit with it being kind of cartoony, kind of anime, kind of expound upon that, and we'll get into the plot next. But let's go ahead and talk about the tone, the visuals, and everything. If you can kind of walk us through that. What that says in this film and how it pertains to, the overall look of the film, the sound of the film, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely has a lot of elements to it. And that's the thing that I noticed this time that I really hadn't noticed so much is the beginning of the film. The first let's say 5 minutes is a totally different movie. It's the style that he shoots it in.
Yeah,
it's more like a serious action sort of thing. The opening shots are something like probably say Corey Yuen would do, or maybe John Woo or something. Mm-hmm. It seems like harder edge, and then it has those weird parts where basically the axe gang goes on a murder spree, kills all these people, and it just turns into a musical after that, where they start dancing. And
oh my gosh,
there's this whole choreographed axe dance, and then all of a sudden it changes styles again. It turns into like a comedy. The look of it is beautiful. I love how the whole film is photographed. The music is amazing. That's obviously adds to the tone, adds to the feeling of it, and it's a lot of comedy. It's a lot of action, and like you were saying earlier, a lot of just unbelievable sights. It's a live action anime mixed with a Bugs Bunny cartoon, as we were saying earlier. I totally get a lot of Looney Tune vibes from this film, and it all works. It all fits together. That's why I just applaud Stephen Chow for this. And as we'll get into later, there is 2 scenes in this film that they made me cry, even though I've seen this movie so many times. They work on such a great level, and while I'm watching this movie, I'm just like, this movie should not be this good. It should not work this well, but it does.
So the tone and the pacing of this film, I remember telling you just how much fun. I remember texting you how much fun I was having, and a lot of that has to do with, of course, the plot, which we'll try to describe here in just a second. You will definitely, but the tone and the pacing is what I want to talk about first of all, because the pacing of this film is very cartoony in the fact that it just goes and goes. Like you almost have no time to breathe, you know. And
no, there's not a slow scene in the film.
I kind of want to confess that I rewinded a couple of things just because I felt like things just went over my head. Not in the sense of I didn't understand it, but it just like flew by a little bit. And I'm sure you'll be able to expound upon that in a bit. But talk about the tone and, of course, the pacing, because that's something I just really enjoyed, because it just felt like it was just going, you know, and not in a brisk pace to where it was going too fast, but it just didn't bore me. I was never bored in this film, even if it did slow down, which you mentioned some of the emotional scenes. I was never bored in the film. So, what are your thoughts on that as far as the tone and the pacing of this film? Because I really feel like that's where this film really succeeds, other than, of course, the story, as we'll get into.
Yeah, it just speeds along. It never stops. A lot of it is what he's doing as far as the snappiness of the camera movements, fast edits at times. It's got a lot of action to it, obviously. The dialogue's fast. It doesn't take many pauses. But at the same time, it does pause at certain points where it needs to be a little bit more quiet with a little bit more emotion behind it. Just a little bit, just sprinkled in, not like you're saying, not to add too much of that in there. But I've sat down and watched this movie with so many people, and I've never heard anybody say, you know what, I didn't like that movie. I was bored by it. Everybody has had a generally good experience. And if you didn't catch everything, you enjoyed it. And I didn't catch anything the first time I watched this. I catch more and more every time I watch this. This is actually the first time Singh's whole arc, Stephen Chow is the main character, his whole arc really resonated with me this time. And this is the first time I kind of understood kind of what was going on with that. So I think it's a very deep film under the surface. But it's like you're saying, it moves at such a brisk speed. It's so entertaining that anybody can sit down and watch this. I would recommend it to almost anybody.
Chow!
All right, so we've talked about the tone, we talked about the pacing, we talked about the music, which is all. But dude, what is this film about? Can you explain the plot in a little bit of a concise way of what's going on and what's the story? And by the way, this film is pretty old, so here's your big spoiler alert.
20 years old this year.
There you go. So what's the kind of the plot in a nutshell?
Well, I'm not going to give everything. The setup, just in case you haven't seen the film, or if you haven't, you need to go out and watch it. It's pretty easy to find.
Or if it's been a while. You just need to jog your memory, or it's like, what was this film about? I don't remember watching it.
So basically, we got the Axe Gang, and the Axe Gang are terrors. That's the thing that I noticed. The beginning of this movie is showing you this is a harsh world. It is a violent world. It's
Exactly.
brutal.
It is.
This is a comedy, mind you. And that's the way it is. People just take what they want. They hurt the weak. They hurt the innocent. And that's kind of the setting. That's where we are living. And only the strong people, the people that can actually protect the others, they're the only people that can really kind of live their lives, it seems like. I might be thinking too deep about this. I don't know. But that's kind of how I feel about it. But the Axe Gang shows up to the pigsty, which pigsty is this like giant apartment complex where people just live in little houses. But at the same time, they have shops there. They have businesses there. And it's like its own little segment of like old, I guess, Stephen Chow, apparently he based it off of where he grew up. And it's sort of like an old 1970s, 1960s poor part of town. And the crazy thing is that this place has got a lot of kung fu masters that live there. And if you guys know kung fu, you've seen kung fu in films before, guess what? It's not like the kung fu they fight in this film. These guys can do insane stuff. They do Matrix stuff in real life, I guess. They can fly through the air. They can punch people across like 50, 100 feet. They're just superhuman, if you will. Yeah, Axe Gang doesn't stand a chance against these Kung Fu Masters. So eventually they recruit bigger and bigger baddies to take them on. I guess as we start getting into the heart of this film, I guess we should talk about our main character, Singh, played by Stephen Chow. Like I said, we've talked about his direction, but his acting and the writing, is very good. This character that he goes through. I mean, at the beginning, he's just kind of selfish. He's He's kind of rough around the edges, not a very nice guy. Right. But at the same time, underneath, you can tell this with the performance. I'm going to see if you think so. Underneath, you know he's kind of good. And I don't know if that's Stephen Chow, just the persona of what he is, just the fact that he's funny, or I don't know. I always just feel, even the first time I watched this, that I knew this guy was a good guy.
Yeah, that's the thing I was... wanting to discuss with you, because this is an interesting character. It's an interesting performance. It's an interesting character. I wasn't really sure. I'm still not really sure. I could probably go back and watch this film right after this and not be really sure. But that's not to say I didn't like the character or what the performance is, but I didn't know if it was anti-hero, if it was a hero. I don't really know what the point is, but I guess that's maybe up to your own interpretation. Is that what you think?
I think so, but I think it's also the film is more complex than it appears on the surface. I
agree with that.
That's what I've noticed. So his characters, they never explicitly say any of this. You have to just get this from watching it. He basically is a good person. He's a good character, but this brutal world that he lives in has made him bad. It has made him rough, and he kind of sucks at it. He's not very good at being mean. Because he's not very strong. He's not very intimidating. So he's kind of like playing against type, I think. He's trying to be something he's not.
I guess kind of like Batman. Like, if you didn't know who Batman was, you might think he was a villain. But we all know him as this kind of like brooding, dark, menacing hero. So I guess it's kind of like that. Is that too much of a stretch?
I guess, I don't know. I guess if you just on the surface, he's like I said, he's just confused. I think that's the big thing, because we get him when he's a kid. Finally, about halfway through the movie, because that's the thing. You change your mind on this guy as the movie goes on. At first, you're just like, who is this clown? Why is he trying to pick fights with everybody? Why is he so weak? Why is he so mean to his little sidekick, the big O dude? And you're just kind of like, I don't know what to think about this guy. Like, kind of like watching him, and I like to feel what he brings to the movie, because you're not even sure if he's the main character, because right now he hasn't really done anything other than get beat up.
Right,
So he
exactly.
just seems like the comic relief for the first part of the film. But then they have that flashback to when he's a kid, and you see him wearing like the Superman cape coming in to help the girl.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he comes in, he gets the crap kicked out of him. And to me, this scene, I don't know if you should cry about it or just feel bad for the guy
yeah,
or laugh at it.
yeah.
Because I don't, this is the only scene that I could think of at this time when I watched it where a little kid gets peed on by a bunch of other kids. And
Yeah, I didn't
And-
know if you wanted to talk about that or not.
that's just the lowest that you can get,
I think so.
This
yeah.
guy's crushed. Yeah.
Lowest is that you'd want to watch in a film. I mean, you know, but it's pretty bad. And but that's the thing. Like, he is definitely being picked on. He's definitely being peed on. and you're feeling sorry for this kid. You know, much like Bruce Wayne. You know, kind of like he's being I don't even know what the word is, but he's being manipulated into something that he becomes later on, a la Batman. So that's where I think the comparison, at least in my head,
Okay.
comes in.
I guess
comes
so.
in play.
If that works for you, that's
That's
fine.
just how I say.
Yeah, but
if I'm completely wrong about that, and Stephen Chow happens to see this, I apologize, sir.
I guess it's Batman as he joins the League of Shadows. I guess that part of his arc, because he's trying to be a bad dude, he's trying to live up to that, but then. As we'll talk about later, he gets the crap kicked out of him, and he becomes a good guy.
Yeah.
He becomes a superhero, and I think that's what the film is really about. I think it's about him and his arc, but I'll save that for later.
Yeah.
If we're talking about these other characters, it's really hard to, just because a lot of these actors are like 1970s actors that kind of like retired for a long time, and then he gets them back for these films. So I guess we'll just talk about how funny the landlady and the landlord is first. What did you think about these two characters?
Just completely cartoony. I think this is where kind of the cartoon stuff kind of kicks in. At least for me, it did. I obviously it's comedy relief, but as far as these characters in the pigsty and that kind of thing, I enjoyed the funny stuff. I like comedy. I'm a huge fan of comedy.
嘈亂巴閉，啲覺都唔使瞓啊！人哋聽日仲要翻工啊！你車。
We talked about the music and how the music and the comedy are interwoven in this film, and man, that's just brilliant. Like, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel in the way of anything. I think it's a real compliment to what Stephen Chow's trying to do with his story and everything. But I think all of this comedy, music, and the cartoony stuff really marinate together very, very well.
Yeah, and the music kind of shifts, shows you when there is going to be different things. Like it comes in whenever he first introduced the pigsty, and this should be like something that seems really bad because all these people are living very poor, very destitute, and their landlord is some dude that just goes around and like flirts with other girls, and he's just a silly dude. But then the landlady's like really mean, like goes around telling people to pay up, you bum, and all that stuff. But then like they just randomly, they're superheroes. Like she just runs at the speed of light up to the bed at one point. They're just like insane, and you don't realize this till halfway through the film, and that's what it gets crazy and crazier. But yeah, I agree with you. Like this whole tone of this whole area and just sort of the vibe that you get when you're living in the pigsty, it's like they could just make this into a television show or something. Like here's the sitcom for the week. Here's what's going on in the pigsty or something like that. It's very cool, and I like this part of the film. And then the action gets big from here because we have these three guys doing insane stuff, and even they're kind of ridiculous. I think it's definitely supposed to be for humor, and I really like this action part where they just get to be introduced.
Yeah, the action then I think that's the thing that I really want to focus on here, because this action, we talked about it being cartoony and just kind of, definitely not real life stuff. Like, you wouldn't see people do stuff like this in real life.
No.
You mentioned some of the superhero people, so to speak. But let's talk about the action. Like, do you feel like that there's any sort of... I just want to get your thoughts on the action, because I really feel like that's, again, another part of this film that makes it what it is, because it's fun, it is cartoony, it is kind of silly, but I don't think it's too silly. I think it really just adds to the mystique and the fun of this film.
Yeah, because it has no boundaries, it has no rules.
Right. Exactly.
It starts off pretty basic kung fu type stuff.
Yep.
And then as the film goes on, it gets crazier and crazier. And it's I guess it's worth noting that the fight choreography is Yuen Ping, who is the guy that's famous for doing The Matrix, the guy that's famous for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of movies. I've been getting into his filmography. Like, he's actually a great director, and he's the guy that studies Donnie Yen and everything. He's pretty amazing, and I love that he worked on this film. And to me, every fight feels different, because every fighter has a different style. Because the first three guys, they fight very traditional, but then these Blues Brothers show up, and that's who they're based off of. These two guys that play the Gochin, and they summon swords out of the air to kill people. That's when it gets crazy. That whole fight there, it's almost like it becomes a horror movie, because these guys can just kill you just playing their music. And then the landlord and landlady just obliterate those two dudes. And then we have the big fight with the Beast, which it almost becomes like 3 OP guys just going at it, but at the same time the Beast is a lot more frightening, because we've seen him like kill people up to this point. And then the ending fight, oh my gosh, we'll save that for later, because that's when it gets all full on, like this video game sort of character out here just beating up everybody. Which apparently I didn't catch this until this time watching it. That's he's supposed to be Bruce Lee at that point. That's why he's wearing Bruce Lee's clothes, and that's it's like Enter the Dragon, where remember he's just knocking down everybody. Just to reference a previous episode.
So we talked about. The action and the drama, or the action and the comedy, but then, and we've kind of hinted at it, but I think as we kind of close the book on this film, then it gets very dramatic. And you would think, after all the silliness, after all this action, after all this music and everything that's been going on, and the violence and all of that, you would think the drama would be kind of a sore thumb, or kind of not feeling. But somehow, and I'm not going to say it worked the first time I watched this film, as far as that goes. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but I just didn't get it. I guess I didn't understand it. But the drama actually really does work in the midst of all this. What are your thoughts on how this kind of builds up to this dramatic arc, as you said earlier?
Yeah, and this, I don't want to praise the guy too much, but Stephen Chow, he's a genius, because even like his most silly films have a lot of heart to them. They're going to have parts where you become really invested in the characters and you want them to succeed. And I think that's where it starts, is we become really invested in seeing. Like I said, he's not the most likable guy at the start, but we still like him. he's still a funny guy that we want to follow throughout the film. And then we have that flashback, like I mentioned, and that's, I guess, the first dramatic moment of the film, because it's just crushing to see this kid get destroyed like this. And same thing when our kung fu masters get killed. It just hurts. I was just like, I didn't want to see those guys die. I feel like the rug's been pulled out from under me. And then the whole ending, oh my gosh, it's this arc that this guy goes through.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be, obviously, because they show you a butterfly when this happens. It's supposed to be like the butterfly coming out. He's fully realized he's reached his final form. Right. And we as the audience are into this action. We're into seeing he has the opportunity to destroy the beast, but instead he's like, no. I'm just that powerful. I don't worry about you. You can become my disciple now. I'll be your teacher. And that's just, to me, that's very beautiful. And I don't think that works if you have a lesser director in the helm, because then it's just is a ridiculous cartoon movie. But now that Stephen Chow's behind the thing, and I'm pretty sure other people can pull this off too. I'm not saying he's the only one, but to me, because they've laid the groundwork to this point, this whole ending really worked for me, and I really enjoy the drama and where this film goes.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I feel like that while there's a lot of silliness, there's a lot of really interesting action, comedy, music, and all that. The payoff of this film and the way this film ends, it really surprised me, man. I really felt like, I'm not saying it, I felt like, Bugs Bunny was going to come out and do some kung fu at the end or anything like that.
Hey, it wouldn't surprise me.
But I was really shocked of how it really brought everything back down to kind of a believable thing, like, if not believable, a relatable situation. Yeah, he could have taken this guy out and been the beast himself, turned into the beast himself. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna, be the good person, be the bigger person, and either walk away or have you help me out or whatever. And I think that's a really, really touching moment there. Amid all this chaos and insanity and craziness, I really felt that the payoff, because you've been riding this ride for, this entire film, if you've done that and you've really invested, especially in, I think if you really follow his story, the payoff, I really feel like does just that. It really pays off. So kudos to what Stephen Chow was trying to do, was trying to say, and is it nuts at times? A lot of the time, yeah, it is. Is it kind of confusing, as in the plot and everything? Yeah, it can be, but that's the great thing about movies, isn't it? You can go back and watch it, and as you said earlier, pick up something again and again. And even just talking about this film right now makes me want to go pull it up and watch it. So if you are any fan of martial arts films, whether you're like me, a novice, or a kung fu master, as my buddy Steve here, that's just a wink and a nudge, man. I really feel like this is a film you should watch at least one time, but I think you're probably going to go back and watch it about 100 times. And as we said, I really feel like you get something out of this film different every single time. So kudos to the guys that made it, and just had a really, really good time.
I'm glad you did. It's definitely it's a very unique film. It's something that there's nothing else like it, really, that I can think of. Because, like we were saying, it works on all these levels. It has these insane actions. And you're rooting for these characters. You want to see it. I will say the effects have aged a bit. But that actually worked for me this time, just because it seemed like he's not striving for reality anywhere in this film.
Right.
I don't think you want to compare it to a lot of the stuff that you see nowadays. Yes, these people have no weight to them as they fly across the room, as he just touches them and they just like, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, those effects kind of work for me just because they're that silly and they fit this movie. And as I've been saying this whole time, I've sat down and watched this movie so many times. I enjoyed it every time. And I've watched it with a ton of people. Like, just jumping ahead, 20, 25 people I've sat down and watched this with. I recommend it to you. And everybody tells me, this movie's good. That's what the SuperCaZt is about, trying to bring these types of movies back into the conversation. It's 20 years old, about to come out with a sequel from what I've heard. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. I love Stephen Chow. I hope he keeps making movies for the next few years, and I'm glad you enjoyed this film.
Jim Henson, creator of The Muppets and Dark Crystal.
Where you go with a head like that?
And one of the most innovative forces in modern entertainment, David Bowie.
I've done for you. I move the stars for no one. Run so long, run so far.
The world of Labyrinth.
In the next episode of the SuperCaZt.
Thanks so much for watching our video. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you'll know exactly when we send out a new video. And thanks so much for being a part of the SuperCaZt.